What's going on, guys? It's Stove here. Today, we are going to be doing the review of what happened this past weekend and even through Thursday and Friday of college football. First, we are going to obviously talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the Virginia University football team beating the Florida State team. Obviously, it was home to Georgia when the matchup was taking place, but still, no one, I don't think, was ever thinking that Virginia even had a chance against Florida State, realistically. Sorry. I feel like that's a common occurrence now. But still, I do think Virginia probably showed their true football power, and Florida State was just very off. They weirdly enough allowed 46 points, something that we probably wouldn't have seen from Florida State this year, just the way that they were playing the last 3 weeks. Unfortunately, though, with Florida State losing, they do drop down quite a bit, and Virginia does jump up to top 25 in the college football rankings. So that's pretty solid. We got Arizona State. The Sun Devils end up taking away a win. Sam Leviett with 291 passing yards was able to, keep everything controlled the offensively. Now the defense, unfortunately, unfortunately, again, I keep on saying a lot of that stuff. Stupid me. But Arizona State, they were able to take away this game with a solid field goal. Actually, both kickers were in deep waters, in my opinion, going into this game anyway. I thought that the kicker was going to be used just a little bit more, but Arizona State was able to come out, get the kick the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game, and just kind of stuck TCU. So even Arizona State is now top 25, I believe, with TCU now dropping out of the top 25 rankings. Houston also, Oregon State put up a very good fight at home. Houston was the better team, though, winning in overtime by the same score, winning by a field goal. So pretty solid. Obviously, I think the way Houston has been going, I feel like they went from a surprising top 16 team, a top 25 team, to now very much looking like just the average Houston team that we have been seeing the last few years. Now going into Saturday, Ohio State versus Washington. A lot of people are saying, well, Ohio State, the way that they're playing compared to the way other teams are playing, it's just you're not being able to squash any of your in-conference teams. Why aren't you able to do this? You know how many times that Ohio State in the last 10 years, let's just say the last 4 to 5 years, Ohio State ended up crushing their conference teams and then proceeded to also lose the more important games. So obviously, I do think that you're going to have games where it's going to be a lot tougher getting into the end zone. Washington did show that they are a pretty tough team. There's nothing bad with Washington University. I think they are a solid program. It's just they're nowhere near going to be the top 5 teams in the Big Ten right now, unless they show me the rest of the time in this year or in the next year or two they just randomly go off on an undefeated run, which they're more than likely facing one two of the top 4 teams in the conference almost every single season anyway. So, but solid win for Ohio State. I don't think they really need to crush every single team. I think they have, and besides them crushing the first 2 teams that they faced, they're in conference now. It's going to be a tougher challenge every single game in conference. Obviously, whenever we talk about the Big Ten Conference, we did have a team of Oregon versus Penn State. Oregon ends up beating Penn State at Penn State, which was an incredible feat for any team to ever do. Oregon and Penn State go into double overtime, and Oregon ends up beating Penn State by 6. So, pretty tough game. If you watch the highlights, it just shows how tough of a game both teams were having defensively and offensively. It was trial, error, and obviously if you're ahead on the college football news, because of the loss, Coach Franklin actually took the loss on himself and not to the players. I do have to say props to that head coach. I'm sure he made some errors that ended up turning into Oregon scoring touchdowns that shouldn't have, or getting first downs that shouldn't have. But at the same time, there were some third downs that I think Penn State should have stopped Oregon in, but didn't. So that's just me and my opinion there. And then you also have LSU versus Ole Miss. LSU going to Ole Miss was already a challenging effort anyway. You ever see people going up against Ole Miss at Ole Miss, it's almost always a hard feat to do. I think home field advantage is always a key factor in how matchups end up the way that they are. So Ole Miss was able to keep LSU from scoring 20 or more points. That was very good on Ole Miss's defense, but they were able to get their kicker involved as well. And I think even LSU, it does kind of look like they got their kicker involved quite a bit. So going off of what I think, Ole Miss was able to do a very good job at home, but will they be able to do this every single time against other teams such as LSU or Alabama or Georgia? Because they are going to have a rockier time with these other teams, especially since they're not even facing some of these tougher teams at their place anyway. So it will be a very tough a very tough schedule for Ole Miss going further into the season. But same as Alabama. Alabama faced Georgia at Georgia. Very tough game. I'm surprised it didn't go into one of the few games that didn't go into overtime. But Alabama did come out victorious with a solid field goal. Good solid field goal. It was a back and forth game. Alabama did in my opinion, crushed Georgia in that first half. Obviously, you had some back and forth drives, but Ty Simpson has just been lighting up every defense that he's been going against. I think Florida State was a bit of a tougher challenge, it looked like, but it was mostly just the Alabama team trying to get used to this offense, because I'm pretty sure Ty Simpson, I don't think he really played that much going into this Alabama season, so he was getting warmed up, but at the same time, with the amount of targets that he has to offer for him, the defense also getting better and better and better every week. Alabama is going to be that secret team obviously a lot of people probably thinking, well, Alabama is this, Alabama is that. They shouldn't be a secret team. They should be one of the teams. They can be. It's just when you lose the way you did, and then you don't necessarily look too good until you face your in-conference teams, then okay, like I'm starting to look at all these good things that Alabama is starting to do. But I'm also looking at things like what Ole Miss is doing and Vanderbilt is doing. Obviously, some people are going to think, well, Alabama's going to knock out Vandy. No, that is not at all what's going to happen next week. But this coming weekend. But we could talk about that whenever we get to it, hopefully either Thursday or Friday. But Georgia put up a very good fight. I think they did come back quite a bit. Let me take that out. I think Georgia's run game was very solid in that second half. Obviously, Alabama was also running the ball quite a bit too. But it wasn't like... I think Georgia, if they would have gotten that run game going in the first half, it would have been Georgia possibly winning the game. But this almost always is a coin flip. Both of these two teams are very solid, and there's really nothing more to say besides that. Both of these two teams will more than likely go into college playoffs. Obviously, with Alabama facing the teams that they're facing, Georgia could lose once or twice here and there, and then neither of the teams could end up making playoffs. But I do think it's going to be a lot easier since Alabama and Georgia have gotten each other out of the way. Now they can then focus on teams. Not saying that it is easier. Not saying it's easy for these two teams going for the rest of their schedule. The rest of their schedule is absolutely insane, both Georgia and Alabama. They face plenty of ranked teams later in the season. But still, I think they get this game out of the way. I think both these two teams are going to learn that, okay, this is the mistakes we need to fix. Alabama, I think they need to work on their run defense. They allowed quite a bit of rushing yards that I was not expecting them to allow. Obviously, the Georgia Gunnar Stockton, he did very well throwing the ball in the second half. But it was mainly that run offense that was able to have Georgia stay in that game. And there's just so many openings that I saw whenever it came to Georgia being to run whichever way that they could on Alabama's defense. I'm sure if they fix that and those linebackers are able to come down a little faster and are able to shift a little bit better when they need to, then that's exactly what they'll do for later challenges, because Alabama will be facing teams that will pass. They will be facing teams that are going to run. Vanderbilt has a mobile quarterback that could dice their defense up in more ways than one. So it could end up being a shootout for the next 2 or 3 games for Alabama, and it'd just be a head or tails type thing where we don't know which team's going to win. We'll just have to see. Anyway, so solid game there. You guys should definitely check that one out. Auburn, Texas A&M. Texas A&M winning at home. Like I said, home field advantage seems to be a very important. Auburn did very much try their best. I thought that they were going to score a little bit more and even outscore Texas A&M, but Texas A&M was able to hold them to 10 points and also get their kicker involved as well 3 times, I'm pretty sure. So Texas A&M, top 10 team, so be aware of them. They're not no one to joke about. Very good game there. Indiana versus Iowa. Iowa able to do pretty well against Indiana. If you look at it, there's a lot of Big Ten matchups and SEC matchups that were very close, and it almost shows that how close every single team kind of really is. Obviously, I can say that, and then Oregon can blow out most of the teams in the Big Ten, or Alabama or Ole Miss just goes on an absolute tear for the next few games facing their conference teams. Sure, that could always happen, but realistically, you're looking at teams that have the talent. Almost all of these teams have a bunch of talent, whether it's a small group of people, whether it's almost the entire team, that they can just put in some of these players that haven't played all year, and all suddenly they're making catches that no one could have ever believed. They're making solid tackles that ends up getting them some more reps the very next game. So realistically, I think you're going to continue to see stuff like this. I think Iowa is a solid program, and they could have won a couple of their other games that they should have won, in my opinion, but they didn't. It was really just because they didn't show up, or some of the penalties or some of the drives didn't exactly go their way, and that's when Indiana was able to capitalize. Obviously, I think whenever you're a top 25 team, or hell, when you're a top 12 team in Indiana, you should want to have more aggressiveness when trying to score. But again, just like Ohio State with Washington, and even Alabama with Georgia, you tend to get more aggressive. Sometimes that aggressiveness can then be taken advantage of in some little ways, and all suddenly now the opposing team is right there on your butt, and now your defense has to basically control their offense again, like how they did in the first half. But now it's a little different, because now this opposing offense now has some confidence underneath them, and they're starting to get more and more riled up, which you need to calm that down real quick. Some of these teams were able to, at home, were able to play very good, very aggressively. Iowa State was able to do that against Arizona, 39-14, very solid game. I think Iowa State has shown that they have their flaws, but they are trying to tune those up, just like any other team that's right now leading their conference at the moment. But again, I think it's Iowa State, it's Arizona State's now in the top 25, and it's like 2 or 3 other Big 12 teams that are in the top 25, so pretty impressive. And I actually can't wait until Iowa State goes into their last 4 or 5 matchups, because that's where we really start to see the true matchups of the Big 12 and beyond, and see who the last 3 or 2 standing going into possibly the college playoffs. Tennessee versus Mississippi State. Mississippi very much at home, trying to get the win. Tennessee just absolutely putting it on them. Joey had 335 yards. You know, there's some solid runs by both teams as well. So, again, very close matchup. Again, these home teams are just trying to get these early wins so at least they can gain this confidence and continue to move forward. I think that they have all the confidence in the world if they're able to score like this, if Mississippi State is able to score against Tennessee like this, if Wake Forest is able to score against Georgia Tech like this, which whenever I was watching Wake Forest versus Georgia Tech, I'm pretty sure Wake Forest was up by like 2 possessions at one point. So Georgia Tech was able to come back, was able to beat Wake Forest. Same with Tennessee defeating Mississippi State, both in overtime. Solid wins by the 2 ranked teams who are still ranked. Vanderbilt put up quite a few points, but the only struggle, the only thing I see is that they are giving these offenses points. Vandy is not doing anything really special, in my opinion, on defense. They can. They've gotten quite a few sacks. They've gotten interceptions here and there, but they're not necessarily dominating too much. They're not keeping teams away from the end zone, which I think that will be a key factor going into the Vanderbilt and Alabama game. That's going to be the key factor on who basically plays better. And I think Alabama going in there, as long as they keep their heads on straight, with Alabama also being very focused and determined to win against Alabama, who they've had a very strong hatred for forever, it feels like. Alabama, I think, will just have to outscore Vanderbilt. And Vandy will just have to work on keeping Alabama from scoring touchdowns. Maybe you can give up a few field goals, but just keeping them away from the end zone is going to be Vanderbilt's objective during that game. Obviously, you got Missouri facing Massachusetts. That was a good blowout for Missouri, keeping their team very confident. And this is another Big Ten matchup with USC and Illinois facing each other. Very close game again. Both quarterbacks, I think, had over 300 passing yards, I'm pretty sure. So props to them both. Again, one of those coin flips that you're going to more than likely see going in later and later into these matchups into the season. Illinois was able to win at home and was able to beat USC, and I think USC should be proud of themselves being able to still, I don't think a lot of these teams should keep their heads down. I do think you should give a lot of props to a lot of these teams that are able to stay in the game and possibly have that advantage to win, where a lot of people aren't thinking that they should be able to win. So props to both teams, but bigger props to Illinois from coming out the win at home. Notre Dame versus Arkansas. Notre Dame absolutely crushes Arkansas. I thought it was going to be a little bit more. Arkansas was going to be able to show more of a defense out there, but Notre Dame was able to kind of silence some people about how Notre Dame was and what Notre Dame was kind of turning into. And everyone kind of thought that they had a national championship hangover, even though they didn't win the national championship. Everyone thought they were just in a worse place in the beginning of this season than they were by the last week last year of the championship. Sorry. And then you get BYU versus Colorado. Colorado able to get some solid points, but the thing is, BYU able to beat Colorado, and Colorado is still not showing anything. Even with the minds that they have at the coaching staff, there's nothing going for them right now. They are not winning home games like they should be. And that's exactly why a lot of these teams are absolutely putting so much pressure on themselves and are able to stay so close in some of these games because of their home games, because they want to win these home games. When losing at away games, it's kind of understandable. At least if you're facing a very good team and you're at their place, it's kind of understandable if you lose, because of just like all of the build up to it, all of the anxiety going into the first quarter, all the way until the last few seconds of the fourth quarter. I'm sure it was a very good game on both two teams' parts, but it's still very bad to see Colorado wasting so much and not even winning these home games like they should be, in my opinion. Rutgers versus Minnesota, that was also a great game. You can look over the highlights there. Minnesota ends up winning at home. Duke versus Syracuse. After Syracuse just beats Clemson, I'm very surprised that Duke beats Syracuse this bad, 38-3. You might as well just minus the 3 into the 38 and got 35-0. I mean, Duke absolutely destroyed Syracuse. I don't know where Syracuse was that entire home game. They didn't show any adversity to try to come back. I think Duke just had all the answers as well, so that was kind of just a throwaway game that Syracuse gave. And Pittsburgh and Illinois, back and forth. Pittsburgh's at home. Louisville ends up winning 34-27. Doesn't go into overtime. It very much could have. But it was very back and forth. Sorry. Kansas State was able to beat UCF. Solid win at home. South Alabama, North Texas. Solid game, but wasn't exactly the best. North Texas was able to do pretty good there. Ohio was able to beat Bowling Green. A lot of these smaller schools facing each other. Hell, even a very good game with Northwestern and UCLA. Very back and forth, but UCLA is still very much not that good of a team to put up so many points. Northwestern just had to really outscore them in that game. California beating Boston College at Boston College's house. Pretty solid. Baylor able to beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State hasn't really been the same since, I think, 2022, I think, or whatever year that they were ranked last. They haven't really done much, and they've been losing games over and over, and I think that's just losing a lot of confidence for them. So really just an icky performance this entire season for them. But I'm not gonna say too much about Oklahoma State. What I will say is Baylor, Robinson, their quarterback, 393 yards. Pretty solid game for him in the passing region. Utah absolutely destroys West Virginia at West Virginia. Very solid game there. Buffalo almost won at home, but UConn was able to muster up a couple of solid field goals and win there. Not much really happening. Miami, Ohio actually obliterated a very small D1 or D2 school. Not that impressive, but for Miami, Ohio, good for them. I don't think they really won against a squad that they left scoreless in years, I think. So, pretty impressive all in all. And yeah, you got a lot of these other different games. Virginia Tech versus NC State. Solid win against Virginia Tech. NC State is still not showing me what I believe NC State can be, because originally I thought that they could have been a more solid team going into this season, and they have, just like Colorado, they have been losing games, whether it be home or away. They have been losing games that you would think that they would have been able to win either by 3 points or by maybe a couple of possessions, but it still shows that also Virginia Tech is still able to put on a solid show. CJ Bailey putting on 240 passing yards. Even running back Stewart was able to put 174 rushing yards, so pretty sure that was why it was kind of very close there. And yeah, a lot of smaller teams. Kentucky, South Carolina. South Carolina was able to beat Kentucky 35-13. And Stanford, San Jose was a pretty back and forth game. Walker, he gets 473 passing yards. Wow. Look out for that guy if he's throwing anywhere else. That was pretty good. It was mainly just passing at that point. If you have rushing leaders, your rushing leader being 48 yards, there was probably a lot of passing going on. Not a lot of defense going on there. Marshall versus Louisiana, 54-51 in double overtime. That would have been an impressive game if it was shown on national television. I mean, some of these smaller schools, they can still be able to put up a lot of points. They can be able to show that they are willing to put on amazing television and amazing entertainment for football fans across the nation, maybe even across the world. I think you just give some of these smaller schools a chance. I think you will be very surprised, and you would love all the highlights going into it. And also, the more you know about these football players going further and further into the season, the more you'll probably know by the time some of these players get drafted, and then you're not kind of wondering why the Eagles or the Arizona Cardinals or the Buccaneers or Cincinnati Bengals or Cleveland Browns or any of these teams are drafting from some of these colleges that you're like, who's this guy? And he's coming from Old Dominion, or he's coming from Stanford, or he's coming from some of these teams that, didn't exactly do well. Why did they draft him? Well, if you look at the highlights, or if you look at some of the film that they have on this guy, pressure, or confidence, very much wholehearted aggression and grit. I mean, hell, you even have games like Hawaii and Air Force facing each other 44-35. Teams like that, matchups like that, is exactly why you should consider watching some of these other smaller games, quote unquote. The only reason why I say that is because a lot of people don't exactly look at some of these teams and think, oh, these teams are going to go to the college playoffs. I don't think anyone is ever going to expect Air Force or Hawaii to make it to the college football playoffs. Or Middle Tennessee or Kennesaw State or Old Dominion. Doesn't really matter. Some of these teams, they're not looking at them like they should. But at the same time, just because you don't look at them like that doesn't mean you still can't look at them at the perspective of they have talent there. At some of these positions, they have fantastic talent, or it's just one guy that's making this team. And once that player or these couple of players leave or get drafted, now this team is back down and they got to build themselves back up with some of these other players. Or because of those two players, some players are transferring over we're going to do exactly what these guys did, and they make that team even better. I think you're going to continue to see more and more talent grow as we pursue more and more things. Hopefully, it doesn't get too out of hand with. Obviously, they limited the transfer portal. That was great. Obviously, they limited the. They should be limiting the salary cap for college football teams, so that should be able to make it a lot easier for some of these smaller programs to be able to hopefully reach some of these other teams, like probably not Ohio State or Penn State or Alabama, but be very close. And it can be like a back and forth thing, just like how the NFL basically is. But anyway, you guys, I've talked long enough. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, hopefully I will be doing a NFL review of the past NFL, well, this past weekend of the NFL one, and I am recording on Monday, so I'm pretty sure Miami Dolphins and New York Jets are playing each other right now, and here soon you'll also have the Broncos versus the Bengals. So by Tuesday morning, hopefully Tuesday night, I should have I should have both these videos out by then. So anyway, you guys have a fantastic day. Please like, please subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think of the video. Let me hear your voices on what I missed on some of these games, what I got wrong on some of these games, and as always, hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.